So Diocletian, having gone ahead and divided the empire, then disappears and retires. He actually becomes a cabbage farmer. He's the only emperor to ever retire. So we have war again, and eventually Constantine the Great will come to power. And his father was Caesar of the West. Wrong Constantine. His father was Caesar of the West. In 312, we have the Battle of Milvian Bridge, where in a dream, God appears to him and shows him this symbol that you see on the right, tells him if he paints those symbols on his soldiers' shields, he will win. He does. So consequently, he wins the Battle of Milvian Bridge. And then in 313, he has split power with another Caesar by the name of Licinius, and puts out the Edict of Milan, which basically states that Christianity is accepted within the Roman Empire, because Diocletian, prior to Constantine, had persecuted Christians. In 324, Constantine will go ahead and kill Licinius because he wants to have power for himself, and he will establish a new Rome, the capital at Byzantium, which becomes Constantinople, and today is Istanbul. In 325, he also has the Council of Nicaea. He orders that to come together. There's a lot of history there that I won't get into. Now, Constantine is said to be powerful but ruthless, and he's really just about the last pagan emperor, even though he will never be Christian. He is not a Christian emperor. He is a pagan emperor. He only converts to Christianity on his deathbed. So, what does he leave us? He leaves us this. This is the portrait of Constantine. And we see a lot less interest in detail, spatial depth, and reality. What we see here is a colossal image. The head alone is 8.5 feet tall, made of marble. And it would have sat on a wooden torso covered in bronze, modeled after a Roman image of Jupiter with him holding an orb or a globe being a symbol of power. And it would have looked something like this. It would have been built much the same way that our Athena of Parthenos was built, where parts of it are marble instead of ivory with the Athena Parthenos, and the rest of it would have been wood covered in bronze. This whole piece would have been probably around 50 feet, 60 feet tall. It would have been immense, and it was meant to be quite intimidating, especially if you weren't familiar with Constantine himself. It's a great symbol of power. But in doing so, we're reducing the form to these very simple ideas. And the drill holes that we see here, the square drill hole on his temple, that was to hold a crown more than likely. Just like with the Greeks, we see bronze added to marble sculptures. Now, this was supposed to give you a sense of eternal authority, but also a sense of imperfection, and the eyes looking up, that he's always looking towards deity. And we've seen that before. We saw that with Caracalla and other emperors. Not necessarily that he's looking to God, because remember, he does not convert until he's on his deathbed, so he's not Christian until the very last moments of his life. Then we have the Basilica of Constantine, or the Basilica Nuova. And this housed the Colossus in the West Apse. So, when we have a basilica form, what we generally have is a rectangle, and then at one end we have an apse, sort of a blister at one end. This apse becomes the symbol of power. So that's where you would be as an emperor if you were visiting. That's where the power position is, and this form will be used by early Christian churches, which we'll deal with after the midterm. Now, this is begun by Maxenius, and this is the last imperial government building erected in Rome. It's a huge structure which would have even dwarfed the sculpture of the Colossus of Nero. And we see this coffered barrel vaulting on the inside of the arches, coffered again to cut down on weight. The whole thing would have been concrete, lined with brick on the exterior and lined with other forms of stone on the interior, or bronze, or painted. It was meant to be a spectacular imperial building and the sort of place that you would hold court, where you might meet with Constantine, that sort of thing. We also have a Clare Story, which is this upper story, which we dealt with at Karnak with the Egyptians and elsewhere. The idea being that you can bring in a great deal of light. You'll also notice that these grates cover the windows. That's because glass in Roman times, we've had glass since the Egyptians, but in Roman times it's expensive, especially large sheets of glass, because it's very difficult to manufacture. So what they do instead is use small pieces of glass with a metal framework in between, which gives us today the sense that there's a grill covering that window, even though that wasn't quite the case.